Welcome back to another episode of the After Further Review Show. I am your host, Marcus Antonelli, or as many of you know me as Marcusi. As you can see, this is a solo recording today. Pat is currently on a flight over to Italy, and he is doing a lot of video logging on the After Further Review Show Instagram. So if you want to see his thoughts on, Bruins trades or Bruins signings, or even just what he's doing over in Italy, I encourage you to give us a follow on there. We just hit 100, so thank you guys so much for that. We really appreciate it. But I'm a bit lonely without Pat and this recording.
Just got through security. That took about 5 minutes. I don't know. I don't know what moron decided we should be here 3 hours.
Yeah, no, I wanted to go through kind of the notable things that the Boston Bruins did today in free agency and just give you guys an overview of my thoughts and what I think it says about the team or what it means or all that jazz. So, and he probably has some big thoughts on Jaylen Brown getting traded to Philly, which to be funny, I did not know the Celtics or anything were doing free agency or trades or anything. It's a wild world of sports in Boston right now with what the Red Sox are doing with the World Cup. Yeah, I did not expect Jaylen Brown to get traded today, but we have Bruins moves to discuss. That's what you guys are here for. That's what I like to discuss with you guys and what you guys want to hear from me, vice versa. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, before we do, I just want to talk about what I thought the Bruins were going to do heading in or what I wanted them to do, right? Definitely after the JJ Peterka deal, I thought a move for a right shot defenseman or addressing the defensive side of things was necessary for the Boston Bruins. I was wondering about, are they going to take a big swing at a Zach Werenski trade? Or is something more simple like a Darnell Nurse swap for Mason Lohrei? That was kind of running around. Are you going to do that? But do you want to take on the cap hit of Darnell Nurse? All of this is already kind of like fizzled out, but you saw the rumblings, you saw the Alexander Nikishin thing, and you're like, ooh, this would be a great get, but none of that has kind of fizzled out. There's still a lot of question marks on, how free agency and how the NHL offseason is going to fizzle out. So while this is a review of day one, I think there are still a lot of sort of questions or lines that need to be filled in with names, so to speak, or just moves in general that need to be made. Like there's a lot of stuff that hasn't happened yet. So we'll see what goes on. But yeah, the Bruins were definitely active today. They definitely made some moves. So let's hop right in. The first move that actually occurred freed up some money, and it was a move that I'd say majority of Bruins fans were looking to see happen. And this was kind of something you want to see. So for me, looking at this, the Bruins trade Joonas Korpisalo to the New York Rangers and his full cap hit. Some of you were confused about that. It was his full cap hit. So the Bruins freed up to $10.7 million, like a little afternoon. So they got a pick and a prospect. This guy's a 23-year-old, 6'5" Finnish prospect. So I don't really know too much about him, but yeah, you dumped the contract of Joonas Korpisalo to the Rangers. I think that's sort of the bigger thing to discuss when talking about that trade, because when you're discussing the Boston Bruins and their goaltending room, right, especially over the last couple of years, you think about Dan Vladar is thriving with the Philadelphia Flyers. I think he just got a 5-year extension. You talk about Brandon Bussey and what he just did in Carolina in helping them to a Stanley Cup. When you think about all these intangibles, look at how the Bruins goaltending room was heading into last season. The Bruins getting Joonas Korpisalo sort of created a logjam in the system over the past couple of years. And what I mean by that is the Bruins have Michael DiPietro. DiPietro, especially over this past season, dominated the AHL. I think he led the league in wins, in save percentage, in goals against average. And I think he won the league MVP, best goaltender, stellar. He's practically done everything that you could ask of him in the minor leagues for the Providence Bruins. And since you traded for him a few years back from the Vancouver Canucks, or traded for him from the Vancouver Canucks. So what this trade essentially says, yeah, you dump the contract out and you freed up a little more money for what happened later. and still for now. But the biggest thing this says is the Bruins evaluated, okay, we've already kind of let two young goalies go that have seen success in the NHL. You kind of can't miss on Michael DiPietro. What I think this says is they believe DiPietro is ready to see NHL reps. He already saw a game actually last season. It was just like one, but I think this says that the Bruins are not trying to make that mistake again of losing a Bussy or a Vladar, where they say, "Oh, we really could have used this guy in tandem with Jeremy Swayman. Take that weight off of some of his workload," right? That's a huge discussion, I think, for goaltenders. And I look at this deal for DiPietro's situation and I love it because when you're a Bruins fan and you're looking at, should we say, the streakiness of a Joonas Korpisalo, he definitely had some highs while he was here. He would be, making some stellar streaks of saves. But there were also some lows too. And you questioned yourself, is his play worth the $3 million cap hit? Or could you be getting something better? Or could you have a higher upside out of Michael DiPietro? So, and DiPietro's sort of entering his later 20s. So, you kind of gotta give him a chance at some point. Um, so yeah, it saves some cap hit. Corpusalo goes to the Rangers, and you get to see DiPietro next year. He will be backing up Jeremy Swayman. I think that is the most likely scenario out of everything. The Bruins were getting so many goaltenders. We haven't even talked about the NHL draft. I really wish we could have gone over it with Pat. But what I do know is that Pat and I have been in communication for a while, just like texting back and forth. Sweeney is making him pull his hair over the goalies and everything. He's just like, oh my God, we have so many goalies. But moving on to the next move that occurred that was kind of notable in terms of discussion regarding the Boston Bruins on day one was Viktor Arvidsson. And no, he did not sign with the Bruins. Arvidsson inked a 2-year, $10 million deal. That's a $5 million cap hit for both of those years with a division rival, the Detroit Red Wings. He did not re-up with the Bruins. And this left Bruins fans kind of in a bit of a turn spin of confusion. Why did Viktor Arvidsson not take a Bruins offer, which it was reported that, or at least from what I saw, the Bruins had also offered a 2x5 contract for Arvidsson. Notably, Arvidsson is 33, and he just finished this past year with the Bruins as a comeback, reacclimation project, if you will, scoring like 25 goals plus 50 points. Like when you think about when the Bruins traded for him, absolute home run trade by Don Sweeney, especially when you think about how successful offensively that middle stat Zaka and Arvidsson line were. I think they had like the most goals for in the league in the regular season, or they were top 5 at least, which was great. It stinks to see that you have to break up that combination, but I think the writing on the wall came through when the Bruins traded for JJ Peterka on draft night. It was already a question mark of how are they going to fit Viktor Arvidsson in, with JJ Peterka coming in, given the fact that Peterka fits their window. He's much younger. He also scored 25 goals last year. But, when you weigh your options as Arvidsson, I think at least what this says to me is he probably looked at the opportunity in Detroit and probably said it would be greater than that of a Boston, or maybe I don't know. But from a Bruins case of things, I'm okay with this given what the Bruins need from their young guys. Now, what I mean by that is you saw how Murat Hustadinov and Fraser Minten, where they started this past season. Minten started as the 3C. Hustadinov wasn't even listed. He was listed as a scratch. So Arvidsson departing definitely hurts considering that kind of jolt he brought to your lineup offensively. He was amazing throughout the season. It was fun to watch him and that second line perform. Having said that, given his age and given what signing him would do, it would not only, take up a chunk of your cap hit, but you also wonder, is he a regression candidate given his age? And also, what does that say to the young forwards coming in? I think a huge thing that the Bruins need to start doing, especially with the influx of young talent that is not only coming in, should I say, Fraser Minten, Murat Hustadinov, and of course, James Hagen's next year, but also, the influx of talent that's coming in through like the ranks of college, Do you want to create that logjam at forward? Personally, I don't. I think they had enough forwards signed as it is, especially with trading for Paterka, upgrading in that aspect. It kind of creates a trickle down effect in the lineup. And where does Arvidsson fit in that? Obviously, I would have liked to have seen him back, but given the kind of the money he wanted and everything, and the direction the Bruins are going in, I'm a futures guy. You guys know me. I want to see James Hagan succeed. I want to see Husadinov go off and find himself a third line role in this lineup for years to come. I want to see Fraser Minton dominate. So I think this benefits the Bruins in that aspect. Obviously, you're losing a good stud winger in Viktor Arvidsson, but I think it was kind of best for both parties, given the fact that all the situations I just discussed. Definitely was confusing, but yeah, I'm okay with this given what they have in the forward group. So, but yeah, you do lose a veteran. It does stink. The third sort of move that was major. So not long after Arvidsson signs, it actually takes a bit. I'm kind of everything today was a blur. But the Bruins bring back another familiar face. I've noticed that this is 2 years in a row where they've started to do the familiar face thing. But they bring back Connor Clifton on a 2-year, $2.25 million cap hit for the next 2 years. So he'll get like 4.5 million over those 2 years. But you bring back Connor Clifton for right-handed defensive depth. Now, the biggest question that came into signing Connor Clifton, obviously, I don't mind seeing a familiar face back in the Bruins organization, and I'm fine with the depth. But the biggest question for me at that time was your right shot D. You had McAvoy, you had Yoki Haru, and then you had Clifton before then. So it kind of had me confused a bit where it was, is this how you're gonna run your right side moving forward? It made sense to me in a sense, but I was wondering if a trade was coming up for the Bruins in some aspect where they were going to move off some money. Earlier, it was reported by a few Bruins reporters that they were actively trying to move off of some more money. So that had me thinking, is that a Henri Jokiharju contract going out? Is that a Mason Lowry deal somewhere? Are you trying to get Mikey Asimon's contract out somewhere so he can play more games? Those were all kind of questions that were going through my mind. Like, of course, I'm happy to see Connor Clifton back for what he brings as a depth defenseman, but it made me wonder, how your depth lines up on the right side. I just slammed my elbow. That hurt. But yeah, it just felt like a little bit more of added depth. But what I will say on the positive side of things is it kind of put the writing on the wall for me about Andrew Peak, who we know did not re-sign with the Bruins. And Peak had a $2.75 million cap hit. So when I think about the weight of, oh, do you sign Andrew Peak to what he was expected to get, which was around like, $4.1 million, or do you take in a sort of depth defenseman who knows the system, is familiar with Boston in Connor Clifton for a little bit less? And I thought, yeah, sure. Connor Clifton, bring him back. So I was content with this, but I wasn't also entirely thrilled. But then again, this kind of put the writing on the wall for me that Andrew Peak probably wasn't coming back based on what he was probably commanding in the open market. We have no idea. But the projection, just given the projection of Peak and just given what Clifton had, that's what I was thinking. So yeah, it's good to see Clifton back. But after that, it got a little quiet. We also saw Jordan Harris re-up, so he kind of adds a little bit of left-handed defense depth. I think it was a two-way deal. I don't have it in front of me. Sorry, guys. But a long wait happened. A long wait happened before we finally got, and I noticed too that reporters were saying that Don Sweeney keeps pushing back the press conference. So what that said to me was they were trying to make a trade, and I was wondering, who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? We saw Darnell Nurse go to the San Jose Sharks. I want to say Jacob Trouba also signed there as well. There were a bunch of candidates that were rumored in a sense to be Bruins. Like we saw like Vincent Trocheck, he went to Utah. There were a bunch of names that were just coming off the board and they were getting huge money, huge extensions. And it was just funny to see them all kind of like tack off the board. And you were wondering, and I go back to what I said before. Don Sweeney always does the move that nobody expects. I've always been saying that, and he went ahead and did that. And this trade kind of was not what I was expecting. I was out while this happened too. So it kind of had me thinking, you know, whoa, did not see this coming. But they traded for Will Borgen. They give away 2 future first round picks, and that 28 third round pick could upgrade to a second. I can't read it, but I think it's if the Bruins make the conference finals, they retain it. But basically, my first thought was with Will Borgen's cap hit is this is a player who essentially makes the exact same amount of average annual value as Brandon Carlo. And something that the Bruins have been lacking in terms of their right shot defense. I'm not going to say is the same AAV as Brandon Carlo, but they've been lacking that sort of shut down penalty kill role on that right side. And I think Borgen fits that. That's certainly what his profile says. He also is kind of like, he's also kind of fast too. I'll check back on that. But for the conditions of the trade, I just want to quickly go over it because I want to make sure that, you guys understand everything. So the third round pick in 2028, it upgrades to a 2028 second if the Bruins make the Eastern Conference Final, which they haven't done since 2019, in 2027 or 2028, and Borgen plays 50% of those playoff games. So kind of a Marchand-esque trade condition there. So yeah, you get Will Borgen. He kind of fits your window. He's signed for 4 more years at a, I'd say, reasonable cap hit. It doesn't thrill me, but I think Borgen, given the profile of the player, he'll definitely take some weight off of Charlie McAvoy on that right side, given what he's proven to be in his role. I don't know too much about him at the base level, but I think I just want to pull up a quick stat. Hat tip to Connor Ryan on this one. So he profiles Will Borgen as a physical stay-at-home defenseman, but moves pretty well for a 6'3" skater. So what Borgen brings um, is kind of a lot of speed. He's in the 91st percentile of skaters overall in the NHL last season, who had 22 mile per hour bursts. He had 4. So I guess he's faster. Like the Bruins definitely did lack speed. So if this is something that Borgen profiles as and he can bring to Boston, I'm certainly a fan of it. But overall, I wasn't exactly too thrilled with it because given the fact that the Bruins, added Borgen, they have a lot of defense. They have a lot of money on their defense right now. So if you look at the current cap hit right now of how much they're paying to their defense, they're paying 33.5 million to 7 different defensemen. Now, McAvoy, Lindholm, Zadorov, and Borgen are all getting paid until 2029, 2030. And that used to be, I guess that used to kind of be what Borgen profiles on the cap side of things. You guys know I'm a money guy. That kind of profiles is what Brandon Carlo was. He was like that 4th guy that rounded out the rest of the decor in terms of like the top 4. So Borgen does that essentially, but they still have like Henri Jokiharju getting 3 million for the next 2 years. And then Mason Lohrei's 3.2 million for another season. And Lohrei's definitely been a name that's been tossed around in trade rumors. And you can't help but think what is to be made of this? Where are you going to go from here? I doubt the Bruins go into the 2026-27 season with every single one of these contracts on their books. So potentially, at least for me here, I'll pull it up now just to add it to the stage. This is what the Bruins have in their current cap situation. And I also want to point out on the defensive side of things, right? You sign Borgen, you bring in Borgen and you sign Clifton, but Frederic Brunet is a player that the Bruins kind of have been raving about, especially in the pre-draft media. Oh, I'm gone. Let me go back to me. Sorry. Frederic Brunet. I think part of what the Bruins need to do what they're kind of doing with their forward group, they kind of need to emulate a bit on the defensive side of things. So evaluating which guys aren't in your future plans. If you're the Bruins, you rave about Frederick Brunet and you say that, oh, he could definitely push for an NHL spot. I wonder, okay, you have all these defensemen. You're not going to run all of these guys heading into next season, are you? So I wonder if another trade is going to be made by Boston to maybe move some money off. They definitely, based on reports, were trying to do that, but I definitely like to see that. Remember, this is day one, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, overall, you solidify your top four. It's not exactly the most thrilling moves to get your right shot defense upgraded. But then again, I want to ask, I'll ask it out here because for me, I'm still on the fence between how I feel about this. But I did want to get my initial thoughts out for you guys. Would you rather them have paid a substantial amount of money in a substantial amount of term to a Jacob Trouba or take on the entirety of a Darnell Nurse contract and miss out on like a Zach Werenski trade opportunity? Or would you rather have them like gone about it this way? Because I really wonder how the Bruins are weighing their options in that aspect. Because I wasn't really trying to see the Bruins take on an insane chunk of cap hit. The biggest thing for me was I was looking at Rasmus Anderson. I was saying, oh, could the Bruins essentially have dodged trading for him and giving up futures and instead brought in Rasmus Anderson after the season? But he signed with Vegas, so it doesn't really matter. But um, overall, you look at what some of the top defensemen are getting, and even then, like Bowen Byram getting $12.5 million. I already mentioned Trouba and Nurse. Also, oh my God, I'm blanking on the other defensive deal that happened. I think when you look at kind of how they needed to play this contract wise, I like how the Bruins are keeping some cap flexibility. And based on what some other teams gave up in terms of term, in terms of contract money, in terms of assets, in a trade, I'm okay with the Bruins kind of not buying low, but just settling in a sense and finding a need that they've identified. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I wasn't really trying to see them give up too many more futures after Paterka, if I'm being completely honest. So this kind of fits with what I expected out of them. Because imagine if they actually were to trade for Zach Werenski. I saw a lot of people talking about, oh, they should have gone for Werenski, or oh, I'd love to see Alexander Nikishin, or imagine if they went the route that I saw a lot of Bruins fans not wanting to go in getting a Rasmus Ristolainen for another year at his cap in, and then you have to weigh the extension of that. There were a lot of options out there, but for me, I'm just kind of okay with it. Like I'm not overly thrilled right now by the acquisition of Will Borgen, and especially I need to see what they do after this because I think there's still a lot of moves to be made. But yeah, here is how the Bruins kind of ended up with the end of free agency. They also made a bunch of minor league signings. They brought in Brendan Gaunce, who notably played like one game with the Bruins in 2019-20, and Yuri Patera, who they had on I want to say a tryout agreement while the Jeremy Swayman contract debacle was going about. So yeah, there's two familiar faces. It felt like they were just kind of going for familiar faces in a sense. Also, something I do want to point out with the Bruins and what they brought in. If I am correct, or there hasn't been any sort of official announcement about bringing in general manager, former Sabres GM Kevin Adams. But with you trading for Will Borgen, that is I want to say a third Sabres player that they've acquired, or a third former Sabre that they've acquired. So Borgen played with the Sabres from 2018 to 2021. He was originally a fourth round pick of Buffalo, 92nd overall. You also saw how they traded for JJ Paterka. That's another former Sabre that was under Kevin Adams. And then today as well, Connor Clifton, yes, he's a former Bruin, but I do wonder if Kevin Adams, and this could be completely, I mean, Elliot Friedman reported it, so it's probably the case that Kevin Adams is under the Bruins organization now. I do wonder how much of his influence has been on the acquisitions of Peterka, Borgen, and Connor Clifton. Of course, the Bruins like Clifton because of his time here, but Clifton also played with the Sabres. So I really wonder how many of these Buffalo reacclimation projects are not reacclimation projects. How many of these former Adams guys we're bringing in? Just something to think about. But yeah, overall, am I thrilled? Am I wilding? Not exactly, but I think their big move kind of already happened. It was the JJ Peterka trade. And going off of that, they definitely have upgraded. And I'm going to go off of what Pat has always said. Are they better than they were yesterday? And I'd say yes, but not like overly. They're better, but I still need to see a little more based on what their moves are. Like, I'm not ready to put a definite stamp on how I feel about the team because I still think there are definitely moves to be made. If I had to choose something I would have liked to have seen it like happen, I'm really curious about what the status are of extensions with Fraser Minton, with Hustadinov, with Pavel Zacha too, because I posted out a few days ago that there are 8 Bruins eligible for extensions. And we saw, I think, Nico Hischier notably was the big extension guy for next season. Like he was due up next year. He wasn't supposed to expire until then, but the Devils inked him. And I think it would be a huge confidence booster, especially if you're the Bruins, right? It's not exactly supposed to. How do I put this? Your big moves weren't going to come from free agency. They weren't going to come. Obviously, yes, the trade happened for Peterka. Your big moves, I don't think, were going to come and be highlighted out of the signings and the trades you made today. But I think the signings you make or the decisions you make on players that are supposed to expire next season. And I think the biggest ones are Pavel Zacha and Fraser Minton. If you get those done, I think there's a few Bruins fans who are looking at this and saying, okay, now we're really starting to solidify something here. So there's a lot of money to be managed in that aspect too. You don't only have to think about the $5 million that they have, for this season, but if you look at their cap projections for next year, 35 million they have for next season, especially with adding Borgen and Clifton and everybody else. So yeah, overall, I'm not too thrilled, but I'm not like mad either. So I don't know. I want to hear what you guys think too, because I love getting your guys' perspective. Yeah, let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to follow along on the at after further review show on Instagram. Follow along there. Follow me and Pat. Pat is active a bit on Twitter or X at Patrick Casey MC. You can follow him there, and you guys know where to follow me at Marcusi wherever you find me. I'm gonna try and edit this and get it up for you guys for tomorrow morning. I will be heading down to Bruins development camp, and I can't wait to see some of the prospects there too. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. It means a lot, but yeah, I just kind of want to get everything out there before I hit the hay because I'm certainly tired after today. But love you guys, all that. Goodbye. If you enjoyed what you watched, please consider subscribing to the After Further Review show on YouTube, where it's actually on Marcusi, but we'll figure out a YouTube channel in the meantime. Please consider also listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're probably available on it, so go check us out there. Also, find us on Instagram. Follow us at After Further Review Show, where you can find clips. And our content is everywhere with player interviews, podcasts, and so much more fun stuff that me and Pat love doing around the Bruins, the NHL, and beyond. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we hope to see more of you. Bye-bye.